There is a specific kind of loneliness that usually hits around 3 o'clock a.m. It isn't just the silence of the house, it is the silence of heaven. You are staring at the ceiling, and the God you sang about with your hands raised on Sunday feels about as real as a fairy tale. You feel like you are drifting in a thick fog, unable to see your own hand in front of your face, let alone the hand of God. The internal monologue starts. The voice of the accuser whispering that you are a fraud. That if you truly believed, you wouldn't have these questions. You feel like your questions disqualify you from the family of faith. If that heaviness is sitting on your chest right now, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are not a bad Christian for having doubts. You are a human being in the middle of a wrestling match with the divine. We need to destroy the stigma around doubt right now. For too long, we have treated doubt like a spiritual virus, something to be hidden, quarantined, and ashamed of. We assume that the opposite of faith is doubt. It is not. The opposite of faith is certainty. Faith requires a gap to bridge. Doubt is simply the tension in that bridge. If you never question, your faith never grows up. A muscle that is never torn can never be rebuilt stronger. A faith that has never been tested by the fires of confusion is often fragile and shallow. The Bible, the very book we turn to, is not a hall of fame for people with perfect certainty. It is a raw, gritty chronicle of people who wrestled with God and won. Let's talk about the man we have unfairly slandered for 2,000 years, Doubting Thomas. We use his name as an insult, but look at the context. Thomas wasn't a cynic. He was heartbroken. He had watched the man he believed to be the Messiah bleed out on a Roman cross. His trauma was real. When the other disciples said, "He is alive," Thomas couldn't just flip a switch. In John 20, he says, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." That isn't rebellion. That is a demand for evidence. He was saying, "I cannot trust a ghost. I need the wounded healer." And how did Jesus respond? Did he excommunicate Thomas? Did he shame him? No. Jesus walked through the wall, went straight to the doubter, and offered his wounds. He honored the question. He met Thomas in the middle of his skepticism. Your doubt doesn't scare God. He isn't intimidated by your why. He invites it. There is perhaps no more relatable moment in Scripture than the father in Mark chapter 9. His son is possessed, tormented, and the father is running on fumes. He looks at Jesus and says, "If you can do anything, take pity on us." Jesus challenges him. If you can, everything is possible for one who believes. And the father screams out the paradox of the Christian life. I do believe. Help my unbelief. That is the most honest prayer you can pray. It is the friction between your theology and your reality. I believe, but I am struggling. I trust, but I am terrified. And Jesus healed the boy. He accepted the faith mixed with doubt as enough. So, how do we move from this paralysis to power? We have to stop treating faith like a blind leap and start treating it like an investigation. First, Peter 3:15 commands us to be ready to give a reason for the hope we have. This means we don't check our brains at the door. Blind faith is brittle. Investigated faith is anti-fragile. You need to become a forensic investigator of your own soul. Jesus promised, "Seek and you will find." That is a call to action. Take your doubts to the text. Don't just read the Bible, cross-examine it. If you doubt God's goodness, dive into the Psalms where David screams at God in anger, only to find peace in the end. If you doubt the resurrection, study the historical evidence in 1 Corinthians 15. God has left fingerprints all over history and creation. But you cannot do this investigation in solitary confinement. Isolation is the incubator of deception. When you are alone, your echo chamber amplifies your fear. You need iron sharpening iron. You need to find a mentor or a community where you can put your questions on the table without fear of judgment. You will realize very quickly that you are not the only one in the room who has wondered if God is listening. And you need to take these questions directly to the throne. It sounds counterintuitive to pray to a God you are doubting, But that is exactly what prayer is. It is the act of dependence, even when the feelings aren't there. Praying, "God, I don't feel you, but I am here," is an act of massive spiritual warfare. Finally, we must deal with the greatest enemy of faith: amnesia. Humans are forgetful creatures. The Israelites walked through a parted ocean on dry ground, a miracle of physics. And 3 days later, they were complaining that God had abandoned them to die of thirst. We do the exact same thing. We experience a breakthrough, and 6 months later, when a new bill comes due, we panic. The cure for doubt is a deliberate, aggressive act of remembrance. In Psalm 77, Asaph is spiraling. He asks, "Has God forgotten to be merciful?" He is in a panic attack. But then the shift happens in verse 11. "I will remember the deeds of the Lord." He stops looking at his future fears and starts looking at the historical data. You need to build a case for faith. I challenge you to open a journal, not a diary of feelings, but a logbook of evidence. Write down every time God showed up, the check that came in the mail, the medical test that came back negative, the peace that made no sense during a crisis, the sunset that reminded you of his artistry. You are building a legal argument against your own doubt. When the fog rolls in, and it will, you don't have to rely on your emotions, which are unstable. You open the book. You look at the data points. You remind yourself that the God who was faithful in chapter 1 and chapter 5 and chapter 10 has not changed his character in chapter 11. Your worth is not based on the strength of your faith today. It is based on the object of your faith. You are God's poema, his masterpiece. He created you. He redeemed you. And he is patient enough to walk with you through the valley of the shadow of doubt. Doubt is not the end of your story. It is often the tunnel that leads to a deeper, more resilient, unshakable trust. Keep walking. Keep asking. Keep seeking. The light is coming.